Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? That's a good start. Okay. Thank you all for joining us today. As you'll be quite aware, I'm not Charlie Price. He's just thrown up about 10 minutes ago, so you're going to have to make do with me. Sorry about that. My name's Dan, for those of you who don't know me, Communications Manager at Argyle. But you're not here to see me. You're here to see these three fine people up here. I'll introduce you one by one. David, to start with, our Head of Finance. Good morning, David.
Morning, Dan. Thank you very much.
Simon, our esteemed Chairman.
So far. Thanks, Dan. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming.
And Andrew, the boss.
I don't know about that. Morning, everybody.
Thank you all for coming. So obviously in the last couple of seasons, we've had to, for various reasons, resort to virtual fans forums. Given that we don't need to do that anymore, what we'll do today is wander around the room. I'll hand you the mic if you have a question. You can ask it to the panel. But before we start, it's a match day. How are you feeling about the match day, guys? I'll start with you, Simon.
I'm actually rather nervous about this one. I thought it was a good game on Wednesday against them. The top strikers were on the bench. But I just always remember a game about 4 years ago when we had 23, 24 shots. They had 7, and we lost 5-1. I think it was my first home game as chairman. So Peterborough always make me a bit worried.
Didn't have to mention the 5-1, Simon. What about you, Andrew?
As always, very confident. I just don't want to get too near to Simon because the vibes will get me. But no, I'm quite confident. I think we played okay on particularly the second half on Wednesday. I was going to say Tuesday, and I know we'll have a game plan. It's actually quite good, I think, to play the team a few days before because there'll certainly be some learnings from that. But I think all the team are very confident. And yourself, David?
3 points. Definitely 3 points, Dan. So you saw what we did in the second half the other day. Law of averages says we'll put the chances away this time. So off we go.
Just got to hit the target, hey? What about the audience? Can I get that's good, a round of applause for the win. Hands up, you think we'll win today? Everyone hands up, please. Draw? Anyone for a draw? And I'm not even going to ask about defeats, I'm afraid, sorry. Just before we get into the questions, I should point out that obviously Charlie was already a fill-in for somebody who usually hosts the forum. It's normally Gordon Sparks. Our thoughts are obviously with Gordon today. He's at home. I think he's watching this, probably watching me butcher it. And our thoughts are with him, and we wish him well in his health. So if you're watching at home, you can still send questions in. We're looking for #ArgyleFansForum if you're on Twitter, or you can comment directly on the YouTube stream, and we'll have time for some of those at the end. But as we have lots of guests in the room, let's start with the guests in the room. If you have a question, please raise your hand. Interesting development. Yeah, very good. Let's go over here. Who have we got, sorry? Oh, back here, sorry. If you could introduce yourself and ask your question, that'd be great. Thank you.
No problem. Good morning. My name is Mark Wilmot. I'm not quite sure how relevant this question may be with ongoing negotiations, but regarding Plymouth Argyle's acquisition of Parkway Sports and Social Club, I grew up in Erniesettle, played football in Erniesettle. There are lots of what they refer to as grassroots football teams, and the entire community is actually quite concerned with what's going to happen with the 13 football teams that currently play there. Can you give an undertaking that you will find a home for them, please?
Andrew, if you want to take that one.
Shall I take the nice, easy one? So first of all, I think it was a great opportunity for the club, and it was we were approached at the end of last year by the vendors, and we took the view that from the long-term ambitions of the club, it would be a great opportunity to be able to think about the training facilities for the future. We want to be a sustainable championship club, and the facilities to be able to do that are key. So we took a long-term view that acquiring the land would be a good situation. Obviously, the vendors made a decision to sell, and they could have gone to somebody else. That could have been perhaps even a property developer or something. So I think fairness to them, they wanted a sports entity, and of course that what they wanted to do is make sure that it would be treated in the right way and the right moves would be made in that acquisition. So to your question then, we take very seriously the need to ensure that the grassroots aspect of the acquisition is looked after. We will engage with the various groups, so Tamar Saracens and Athletic as well, Lakeside Athletic, and we will make sure that we will do our very best to help and support, to find a new home. It's not going to happen. We're not going to be doing that until at least next year, so there is a bit of time, and we wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that. We've got a great track record as well of working with grassroots, so I would say I completely understand the uncertainty, but I would say if it was going to be sold, it's probably in the best hands for that to happen. You'll know what the Trust does in Devon and Cornwall. You'll know also what we do within the academy as well. So we take very seriously what grassroots football for boys and girls means. And obviously we'll work very closely with various stakeholders to make sure the right solutions are found.
Do you have a follow-up on that at all? No? Happy. By all means, you can chat to us after or follow up if you'd like to. Has anybody got any other questions here? Yep, let's go. Here you go, sir.
Before my question, before I come here today, I watched a programme that was on the TV last night, I think, with Crystal Palace and their academy. And, I mean, I was gobsmacked with what they've done since I can remember going there as a boy watching Crystal Palace play West Ham, and it was a totally different world that they're in now. But it's worth watching if you haven't watched it, about the academy. My question is about the area owned by James Brent. Just as you walk past it to come here now, it just seems a wasted opportunity for someone who loves ice hockey and played hockey to see it not being developed. But it may never be an ice rink. I don't know. But is part of the finance that's come in looking at procuring that land back off James Brent and using it for whatever Argyle deemed to be the best use. One of the things I had also looked at was what Bristol City are doing, because I used to have to go up there for work, not so much nowadays, but did and have lots of meetings. I've just seen that they're developing a 4,000 seater capacity sports area right next to their ground for the basketball team, the Bristol Flyers, and for multi-use really. And it's just all these things are excited that's going on. Have we got that sort of opportunity here with the area right here, right next to the Life Centre, to make this a hub for sport for people in Plymouth, the children of Plymouth? Because I'm sure the Plymouth basketball team haven't got a venue at the moment I'm aware of. The ice hockey is dead here. We could well take a big opportunity, not just football. I love football, been over here for 50 years, but I love other sports as well.
Who's going to say that, Simon?
Let me start. We're a football club,
Yes.
and there are no plans to become a multi-sport club. When it comes to that particular piece of land, we've already bought a little bit back, or about half of what was formerly known as Higher Home Park, back off James's company. No plans to use this money to acquire the rest of it. But I've no idea what James's immediate plans for the site are, I'm afraid. When it comes to multi-sports, as I say, we're a football club. Clearly at Ashton Gate, they've gone down the multi-sport route. Their facilities are great. They've established themselves as a championship club. But our goal is to be a sustainable championship club. And I think Bristol City are losing $500,000 a week or something. So, Steve Lansdowne, who's done fantastically by his fans, I think announced in the last couple of weeks that he wants to sell the club. Or that, he thinks it's time to move on, I should say. So, there's a club losing tens of millions a year that's no longer supported by its major shareholder. So I don't want to go down that route.
Understood.
Simon, just while we've got you there, for the benefit of everybody who may not be aware of kind of the story of how Argyle Green came to buy a stake in the club, do you want to just give us a little bit of a rundown on your experience and your story of that?
So the immediate introduction to the people behind Argyle Green was through an intermediary who's known to one of our board members, so somebody we could trust with a good track record, who vouched for them. My policy over the last 4 years since I've been the majority shareholder has been to talk to anybody who's interested in, taking a stake in Argyle or even buying Argyle. And, I think it's my duty, if I think somebody's going to be a better steward of the club than me, to sell it to them. I've yet to come across them. And when I have come across people, they usually want to take full control. So what was interesting about Argyle Green was that they looked at a number of other football clubs and come to the conclusion that they'd rather be a minority shareholder in a well-run club than a majority shareholder in a club that would need a lot of fixing. So we've spent 7 or 8 months talking to them. We've come to trust them. When you have a 20% shareholding, you have very little direct influence over a club, simply by the way that corporate law in the United Kingdom works. So, they obviously want to keep the existing management team in place. They want to keep the existing structures in place. They want to keep our existing strategy in place. They're very happy with the way the club is being run. They're delighted to have representation on the board. We've just had approval from the EFL about Michael Mintzberg, the effectively one of the general partners of Argyle Green. So he'll be joining us on the board. We're kind of looking forward to getting to know them even better, but there are no firm commitments about greater control, about greater ownership, let alone control. So everything's going to carry on as normal, but we've just got another set of deep-pocketed shareholders who can help finance some of the infrastructure investment plans that we've got over the next few years, and we'll see how it develops. But I think they're going to be very, very helpful to us, as we think about how we can build an audience in the United States, for example.
Thank you. Shall we open the room back up again for some more questions? Yes, sir.
Hi, Graham Clark, Sunny Lyndhurst side, season ticket holder. 2 questions, if I may. One fairly straightforward, one for David. Is it too early to say how we performed financially last season? And secondly, for all 3 of you, we're progressing really well towards the sustainable path that you've talked about. But one element that perhaps we haven't succeeded, one of the pillars you refer to, is transfer income, and obviously developing the academy is part of that. But what would happen if we did get a bid for, say, for £5 million for one of our players and we sold him? How much of that income would go towards the playing budget? I mean, I think Andrew's on record saying it's 30% of turnover. Would 30% of that transfer income go towards the playing budget?
Shall I take that first one there? Thank you, Graham. So on the accounts, obviously, we've just finished the financial year. We make a pledge, really, to get our accounts out available as soon as possible, because as an accountant, financial information is most valuable when it's readily available and available as quickly as possible. So that's something that I commit to each year. I go to Andrew, I go to the board, and I say, I'd like to get them out really quickly this year. Is that okay? And they go, yeah, definitely. So we're going to do the same this year. The audit actually starts tomorrow. So what that means is that I've been working very hard over the past few weeks with my team to get those accounts into a position where we're happy with them internally. So they are now locked in our accounting system called Xero. So what happens now is the auditors come in for 2 weeks and they go over them with a magnifying glass, making sure that they're happy that I've recorded everything in accordance with the relevant financial standards. So obviously I've got a bit of a view as to what I think the right position is, but they are subject to change due to auditor perception. I can give some insights into what they look like. So I think I set out in a fans forum, it was October of last year, that we had a budgeted deficit. That was an EBITDA deficit, so accounting terminology, that's earnings before interest, tax, depreciation and amortization. What that means is it excludes basically a lot of the capital investment or investment in players that we've made over recent years, which is spread over a period of time. So that comes off after that calculation. Now that position, it was a loss of 0.7 million budgeted, and that was the budget that we worked towards. Now, that obviously might sound a bit strange that we're setting out on a budget which is a loss, and you might be thinking, what is he doing with our club's finances? But I can assure you we're in safe hands, because we have fortune income, which we do not count in that budget. So fortune income would arise from things like progressing in cup competitions, or compensation received when a player departs, or indeed a manager departs. So to give some insights now, obviously over the past season, you'll be aware that our manager went to Preston. So we received compensation in exchange for that. We also progressed very well in cup competitions, so the FA Cup particularly, most notably, we obviously put in a fantastic performance and had a great day out at Chelsea. That helps as well close that gap, that minus 0.7 in the other direction. I think the likelihood is that it'll be somewhere between 500,000 positive and 1 million positive. So that represents quite a big financial swing in the right direction. So I think we can be really happy with that. Now then you take the depreciation and the amortization off, and it leaves you just slightly negative number. But as I say, that depreciation and amortization, that is not a cash movement. That is a result of past investment. So if you take, I don't know, this TV on the wall over here, we might have paid, let's say we paid £1,000 for that TV. We would depreciate that over 5 years. So a lot of the investment in the grandstand is still coming out in our profit and loss statement today. And that will continue for many years ahead. But all in all, I think we can be really happy with where we are, and we continue on this mission of sustainability, which I think leads me nicely on to the second part of the question. I don't know if Andrew wants to take that one first.
Okay, so I think first of all, I mean, David's alluded to many of the things in his statement there, really. But when we look at how we talked about sustainability, and we talked about being the championship club. I think over the last couple of years, one of the things that we have done is to redevelop the academy, the coaching, the pathway from the academy to the first team, in order to be able to both get players into the first team and hopefully play for Argyle, but also in the event that they want to progress their careers somewhere else, that we are able to generate income. That process, if you like, had to start from quite a low base. We've had to do quite a lot in order to be able to develop the academy. We still got more. We all know that we need to develop the facilities, but you know, places like the Cornwall Hub, the centres of excellence that we've got, we're going to be doing one in Devon as well, all gear themselves towards that pathway from academy through to first team. And in future, that will be able to develop income for us, because that is absolutely one way that we can have that sustainability. What I would say is that we actually also have had some income that has come into the club from that very pathway last year. So we did have an academy player that went to Chelsea and did generate us some income. It wasn't high profile because of his age. But nonetheless, that has shown that we're on that right pathway to be able to do that. And we'll be able to do that in the future. Of course, though, we're only going to sell players if it's the right thing to do for the club. And so, you know, it's not our intent just to, you know, get a player, develop them and then sell them, but we've got to put it in the overall mix. The second part to that is that David alluded to this with the fortune income. We also, from cup runs, so that can be anything from FA Cup, Papa John's as well, that is additional fortune income. So the second part of your question, the third part of your question, I think, was what do we do with when we do get that money in? And we kind of mix that. So we put money, which is about the long-term sustainability, so that might go towards some infrastructure, but we absolutely put money back to the first team. A good example of that is this year's budget, because we've increased that by £1 million from last year, the player wage budget, I should say. It's a bit more complicated than that, the football budget, but the player wage budget, and some of that has come from the income that we generated last year from Fortune income, so it goes directly back into the first team. So it is about that mix. It is about providing that additional revenue to be competitive, but we've also got to do the thing that we all agree that we should do, which is to be able to invest in things which will generate long-term growth as well. I hope I answered that.
If I could just add, it's not a direct answer to the question, but people focus on the wages that are paid to the first team, and it's our biggest expense, so people are quite right to focus on it. But we spend a lot of money on football that isn't directly related to first team wages. We spend on coaches, we spend on improved travel, we spend on all sorts of things that are not directly in those wages. And our kind of basic strategy has been to build an infrastructure or an environment around the first team which will enable players who come in to improve and to excel while they're at the club. So running the football side is more than just first team wages. It's and that's really been part of our strategy over the last few years.
Could I just add one more thing there, just in relation to Graham's question? Graham, you referenced the 30%. It's quite difficult to make comparisons between clubs on that percentage. We are our own club, and the structure of our income is the way it is. And I'll give a few examples. So we do very, very well in retail, as an example, and also hospitality, as another example. Now, where that differs to, say, the commercial side of things or ticketing, is that it has a cost of sales associated with it. So in retail, obviously, we have to buy all of these nice new shirts that everyone's wearing today. Similarly, if you go in hospitality, we've got to buy the food, the staff, and so on. So that has quite a high cost of sales. So if you were to compare us to a club who didn't do as much trade in retail or in hospitality, as an example, what you'd see is that their percentage would be far higher. If you look at the Championship, for instance, a lot of their income comes from broadcasting. The cost of sale is basically the players' wages. So you'll see in the Championship, 100% of the income is being spent on players' wages. You can't make a comparison of that percentage with us. That is based on our income streams, basically.
Sorry, just to put it incredibly simply, we are under the fair play rules. We're allowed to spend 55, 60% of our revenues on player wages. If we spent 60% of our revenues on player wages, we would be losing a lot of money and would be miles away from the goal of sustainability.
Thanks, guys. We'll take another question now. Just to remind everybody watching online, if you submit questions, we do have some time for them on the end. So that's in the YouTube comments section and on Twitter using the hashtag Argyle Fans Forum. Come round to the chap wearing Mac on his back. Here you go.
That's because I'm Mac. Dave McCartney. Questions about, well, it's a kind of multifaceted question. With the purchase of the future training ground, are there medium-term plans to move offices out to there? And if there is, would that be part of the rejigging of the concourse in the grandstand? And the second question is about hospitality. We are always being asked how to get into gold, which is oversubscribed. Are there any plans to somehow increase the hospitality offer?
Thank you, Matt. I think the nature of your question kind of forms part of the answer. It's complex because we know from where we've come from for 2 or 3 years ago to where we are now that ticket sales have gone up, hospitality has gone through the roof in terms of people taking that up. We're pretty much sold out every game for it. So it's tricky. We also know that as well that from the Mayflower Grandstand that ideally we would want to now get more people in, so have higher attendances. So we'll probably average this year something like 14,000. There'll be games that will be less than that and games that will be sold out. What we will need to do, though, is think about the configuration of everything. And it's clear that the Upper Mayflower particularly has restrictions on the concourses and therefore has restrictions on the concessions that we're able to have. And that also means that there are limitations in the revenue that can be generated. So it therefore means, obviously that, we have to look at that as an opportunity to think about what would be the ideal space for it. We also need, before it comes up, I'm going to address Bobby's Garden as well. We also need to think about, I think it'll be a question. So we also need to think about what do we do with the corners, including Bobby's Garden. And again, I think these questions came up 2 or 3 years ago, but at that time we were 9,000 attendants. So I don't think it was, whilst we all agree it needs to be tidied up, I don't think it was really on the agenda to be increasing the sizes there or the attendance or the seating there. But I think now we've got to readily face into that conundrum about what do we do with the whole piece, with the Mayflower, with the corners, etc. And one of the reasons why the big screen has gone in the other area is that we wanted to ensure that we had the space available to be able to think about long-term future development. So all of these different aspects need to be considered, and it goes back to the investment. These are the sorts of things that would be then tie into what do we do with the training ground, what do we do with the Mayflower grandstand, what do we do with the external spaces. It's all part of part of the conundrum and part of the pieces of the jigsaw we need to put together. What I can say is it takes up quite a lot of our time, and obviously over the next few months we'll be working up a plan to be able to develop that and then obviously share it with everybody. Space in hospitality on Gold specifically, I think again we've got the 3 different tiers within hospitality, and we've had one full season where, well, not even one full season where it was where it's been used, and we're still working out what is the right mix, I guess, between the diamond, platinum, and gold. And it's fair to say there's probably demand in all 3 areas. So we want to offer all 3. And again, ideally what we would want is to have different spaces actually for the 3 offerings, because one space for 3 makes it tricky. So I think, again, going back to that kind of long-term piece of the jigsaw, how do we get more hospitality is one of those. But it's certainly something that should be considered, because again, going back to future sustainability, hospitality is one of those things that we've been able to show both on a match day and non-match day is key to the future of the club.
Has anyone else got anything to add on to that? Are you happy? I'm reliably informed, Andrew, that Bobby's Garden has been mentioned a few times on YouTube, so you've covered that one all. Anyone got a question for the panel? Excellent. There you go, sir.
Hi, Paul Collings, Mayflower Upper. You've mentioned sustainability a few times, Simon. It appears to me that your heart is very much in the long-term future of the club. How do we know that the Americans share that same kind of ethos, especially when you mentioned on one of the videos online that family trusts and etc., where perhaps beneficiaries may need to be listened to rather than just individuals, should we say?
Yep, it's a very fair question. Why do we know that they have such a long-term view? Because they've told us that's what they have. But that's all. We've done due diligence, we found out things about them, but we don't know that much about them. So what I really like about the transaction as structured is that we get time to learn more about them, so that if they are going to end up with more than 20% of the club, it will only be because we think that they're going to be as appropriate custodians as I'd like to think I've been. So to me, that really is the attraction, that they were happy to start at 20, which gives them no influence over and above what we're prepared to give them. And they don't have to have any further share ownership. Now, I kind of hope that as the years go by and we get to know them and to trust them, that they will have greater share ownership. But even that doesn't mean that they're going to have control. They like the club as it is, but we definitely have to get to know them. But I think that's part of the attraction of the deal, that we can take our time.
Simon, there was actually a question that was pretty closely aligned to this one on Twitter, so I'll just cover it off now with you, if that's okay, from Matthew Labacombe. How do new investors plan on getting a return on their investment? Will this be in dividends if the club has a profitable year in the longer term future?
I've just remembered another bit of Paul's question. I'll come back to that one. Again, one of the attractions is that it's a very diversified group of investors. So it does include family trusts, but they're tiny shareholders on a kind of net basis at the trust level. So if they change their minds about owning a football club, it would have almost no impact on the future. So it's really, again, it's not a single person. It's a bunch of, well-heeled, well-connected people who, by the way, the ones that I've met are really nice as well and seem to be wildly enthusiastic about being part owners of what I think is a good lower league football club with ambition. So all that fits what we want from any shareholder, I think. How they will get a return, I'm not sure. I tried to advise them that investing in a football club is not the way to wealth and glory. They will certainly not be getting dividends. Again, they have no control over that. The board sets dividends, and the board has a policy that earnings that are generated, the surpluses that David referred to, get reinvested in the club. So their return is really going to be only in the long term, and it's only going to be if we achieve our ambition of being a sustainable championship club, which tends to lead to an uplift in value. The identical club in League One will be worth less than the same club in the championship. So, their ability to make money out of this investment is very much tied to our achieving our mission, our goals.
Anyone got anything to add on that one? Are you happy, sir?
Yes.
Great. Has anyone else got any questions in the room? We've got plenty online, but it'd be good to get through everyone in the room first, if that's okay.
Morning, gents. Tony Prout, Block 5, Devonport End. The question I'd like to ask you is the new screen that we're going to get. Are you looking for a good financial return through advertising?
Yes, we are. So when we determined that we would put a big screen in finally, or as was referred to previously, a scoreboard, it's a bit bigger than a scoreboard, we looked at the investment and then the return. So it is a large investment for the club. It's a good example of investing in an infrastructure which will determine long-term growth. So advertising revenue is key to that. We'll also be able to, it'll be multifaceted, but we'll be able to get a relatively quick return from that as part of our business planning for this next year too.
Just to follow up on that, Andrew, because we got one on Twitter that's similar. Ben Robinson says, when will it be up and running? And what will be shown on it, really?
It will be up and running at the end of August. Yeah. It's one of those things that you can replay, can't you, in a couple of months' time. And that's 2022 as well. I'll even go as far to say that. It did. There is a little bit of a story here. So it did start off somewhere in Southeast Asia, and had to get its journey then to Southampton, and we had put a lot of time in to be able to get it. So the ship that it was on, it sank halfway round, but fortunately our container was not part of the sinking containers, but then had to be retrieved by another ship, and it then lay in a nice place called Djibouti for quite some time, which I wouldn't necessarily go on my summer holidays there, but anyway, it was in Djibouti for a while, It's finally reached Tangier, I think, earlier this week, and is now going to be on its way this week up around the Bay of Biscay to Southampton. You can see I know exact details of where it is. That's because we got a tracker on it as well. And it will be in Southampton in a week or so's time, and then we'll be able to install it, hopefully, for the Bolton game, but if not, the one after. It's not. It didn't. The container didn't go over, so we were quite lucky with ours. I've forgotten the rest of the question.
What's going to be shown on it?
Oh, well, various, as well as the adverts, we'll be able to obviously link in with Argyle TV. We'll also be able to, put pre-match entertainment in its various guises. So it'll be multifaceted in what we can do. It's actually quite key to how we'll do match day as well. So people coming in earlier, having entertainment. It will also be very fan-focused, so lots of content around, fans, supporters, etc., as well as different programming.
And we've obviously got replays as well during the game, if they're not too contentious.
And of course replays, yes, not contentious. We never get poor refereeing though, do we, Simon?
No, never. I deleted that tweet immediately. Just coming back to the concept of the business case. The business case for the large screen TV was that it would generate a return that I think was reasonable, but it wasn't tremendous. The last time we put TVs in, soon after Jamie Absley, hi Jamie, soon after Jamie arrived, it was his idea that we put TVs in the concourse, and I think the payback on those was about 9 months in the end, wasn't it, Jamie? Something crazy. The payback on this will be a bit longer, but it's part of our program of enhancing the experience at home park. So we're prepared to accept a lower return. It's also a part of our overall TV strategy that Andrew alluded to, and I speak as somebody who watches most Argyle games, obviously, from the United States on Argyle TV. We've invested in Argyle TV quite considerably over the last 2 or 3 years, and it's now, I think it's an outstanding product. We like the commentary. I'm speaking on behalf of the overseas viewers. We like the commentary, we like the product, and we've invested not just in the large screen TV, but in a better media control room. So that product is going to continue to be enhanced. And I think over the next 5 to 10 years, being able to sell Argyle TV to subscribers throughout the world, to expatriate Janners and to the diaspora of local people throughout the globe, I think is going to be a big opportunity. So it's something I'm quite excited by.
And if anybody doesn't believe that far-fetched story about things falling off containers in Djibouti, Christian at the back over there will share web links to the stories, and he'll also show you the tracker, which I'm pretty sure is the homepage on his phone at the moment. Has anybody got any further questions? Yes, I'll come around to you now. A reminder that you can submit questions if you're watching online on YouTube or on Twitter using hashtag #ArgyleFansForum.
Thank you. I'm Matt Corey. So sort of links in a bit with what we were talking about with Argyle TV. So me and my dad have been season ticket holders for the better part of 20 years. And only time when I didn't have one was when I went away to uni. And I had a flexi ticket. And quite often I found that when I came back, obviously we couldn't get I couldn't be sat next to my dad sometimes because he had a season ticket. I didn't. And so unfortunately I'll be moving country next year. But I also want to come back. And I was thinking, would you be able to have some sort of thing where you could have a season ticket, but also the games you're not there have the Argyle TV and being able to watch it, but having the sort of like guaranteed seat when you came back? I don't know, or like some sort of package sort of deal, basically. Yeah.
Sorry. Could I just ask a quick question? On the TV, who is going to have control of the remote?
Me, obviously.
Is it a man or a woman?
It's a man. Come on, let's be frank. Equality has reached most places, but not there.
We've got a special sofa for the remote. I think it's difficult to answer the first question because there are lots of ways we like to provide variety in terms of tickets. So as you mentioned, we have full-blown season tickets, we have flexi tickets, etc. But we're also very wary that there are different demands for different things. I think guaranteed seats, particularly when obviously we've got full attendances, is a tricky one. But there are obviously ways around being able to compensate for that, you know, so if you're not able to attend, then it goes to somebody else, etc. And that is something that we do, but we'll be advertising a lot more that there is the ability, because we do want, you know, whether, an example is today, is we will have a lot of we've got a lot of season ticket holders, but whether everyone does turn up because of the heat, etc., is another question. And we would want to be able to give the opportunity for people to be able, or want to give that, enhance that opportunity for people to be able to come. So I'd rather if you perhaps drop me a note and we can then look at how we might be able to fulfil that, because it's a little bit tricky, but we'll certainly look into it.
I think there are two issues really. One is about using empty seats and essentially finding some kind of way to have a marketplace or something, or a facility to enable people to sell back to the club and then the club sell on. And the other one is about ticketing priority, and clearly this is something that's very much on our mind with the introduction of the point system. Any system that we have will not be perfect. You know, we're allocating increasingly scarce resources, and there will be people who don't get them and they will be unhappy. But you know, the point system, I think, is just the first step towards trying to be more thoughtful about what's an increasingly scarce resource. This wasn't a problem 4 or 5 years ago, and it's a kind of unhappy consequence of what really is a fantastic story that, you know, we've grown Argyle's support so dramatically in the last 3 or 4 years, but very much top of mind about how to make it fair.
Oh, hello. You're right. Here you go, sir.
Thank you. Sorry, Mark again, Devonport End. Just a couple of things I'd like to pick up on there. First of all, the match experience over the past couple of years has been outstanding. So, yeah, you deserve recognition for the improvements, particularly nighttime games with the lights and the music. That really gets the crowd going. Just to pick up on the gentleman's suggestion regarding returning of seats, could you potentially look at an authenticated link through your own account, just so that if you're not able to be here as a season ticket holder, you could literally log into your own account, hit the link, and advise your team that you're not going to be able to make the match. You know then that you can sell that seat.
That was kind of what I was alluding to. I mean, there are quite a few clubs who do that, and so certainly something that we will consider.
Got any more in the room at the moment? Excellent. Walk around the camera. There you go.
Thank you, Dan. Kevin Axworthy. I just want to ask whether we're thinking of changing or lobbying to be able to change any kick-off times over the winter, to kick off earlier, to cut down on electric costs and further enhance our environmental side of things.
I don't think we haven't considered that at this stage. I think it's a very good question, if particularly, obviously, you know, but it's one that all of the football leagues would need to consider. Obviously, as well, though, I think the other aspect to it is, as well as the environmental side, is, you know, the other aspects related to it, travel for fans. You know, you would have to think about that. You would also have to think about some of the other things that we face, which is if you've got an afternoon kickoff, it means that we can do functions in the evening the night before. If we had 12 o'clock kickoffs, as an example, that might limit that. So I think it's not a straightforward answer, I think, but it's certainly something that all of us should consider, I think, in terms of how we reduce energy, our energy usage and our costs. One thing I would say is that we have launched this year an environmental policy which is multifaceted in how it looks at our energy usage. We've got a commitment this year to reduce that usage by around 15%, and we talked about monitors before for the tracking of the TV coming to home park, but we actually are now able to monitor all our energy usage. We've got meters in everywhere. we're able to actually pinpoint where most of our energy is used on a match day. We've got plans in place in order to be able to look at each individual area where we might be able to reduce that energy consumption. And the same for water usage. Obviously, we know that it's a, particularly when we look out today, where we've got green pitch and we've got water on that, so we need to think of other ways of being able to do that sustainably, which is around rainwater harvesting, etc. So I think there's a lot of things that we can and should do, both as an individual club and collectively. And I take your suggestion on board too. Needs consideration, I think.
Yeah, just to add to that, Andrew, just on the environmental plan, since you mentioned the floodlights, I mean, we selected the floodlights that are in place because they are more environmentally friendly, they use less energy than the old ones. Andrew mentioned the monitoring system, so Christian, Kent and I were sat at my desk yesterday having a look at how much energy the floodlights used the other night at the match. So we're able to nail that down exactly so we can start to monitor, okay, how long do the floodlights actually need to be on for? And we can keep them on for that minimum period of time in order to reduce that consumption. And then the third point I was just going to mention is, again, part of the environmental plan. We've obviously got more solar panels now, and I don't think we're actually using any electricity from the grid at the moment, which is fantastic. So, thanks.
Rob Jenkins again. About the floodlights, there are some leagues now that are considering earlier kick-off times, some of the like conference leagues and such like. And what they found during lockdown is they could also sell their product because it didn't fall into that time period between 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock on a Saturday. So some of them are using both, perhaps that as an excuse now to bring the time earlier to be able to do both, benefit from not the floodlights, but also the fact that they can sell the product to people online. I just thought I'd bring that up because it was in the last price of football.
It also makes Simon get up earlier.
Exactly. we do have fans in California, which is 8 hours behind. But so that is actually a genuine issue. The time, it basically depends on who you're playing. So we've had a game moved from 3 o'clock to midday by Sky, the Ipswich game, and that's a bit rough on the Ipswich fans, who going to have to get up even earlier to travel, and it's on a Sunday, yeah. So it's a very complex issue, this whole time thing. Our general position is that we think we should be able to stream games at 3 o'clock, and that our fans should be able to watch games whenever, in whatever means they want. I like to think that our fans would prefer to watch at the stadium than sitting on their couch. It's a controversial issue for various reasons to do with revenue sharing. A lot of clubs are worried that if an Argyle fan decides to watch from home, they don't get any share of the revenue, whereas if you decide to go to their stadium, they get 95% of the ticket sales. So that's all something that needs to be sorted out. But to me, the basic principle is fans should be able to watch games through whatever means they choose. And it's partly a supporters' right thing. Now, for us, it's partly a revenue-generating thing, that we've invested in TV facilities, we've invested in the studio, the big screen, everything that surrounds Argyle TV. And we think it's an opportunity, and that, we need to think about, all clubs need to think more about the opportunity than they do about the threat to stadium revenue.
While we're on controversial topics, we've had a couple of queries online about the Upper Mayflower. Should we get stuck into that? John Hopkins says, I'm a very grateful fan for everything being done infrastructure-wise at our club, but I've seen nothing to explain why the grandstand refurb ended up initially at 50% capacity and now 75%. Wasn't safe access and egress looked into at planning stage, and if that's not enough for you, I've got another one as well. Derek Bartrup on Twitter says, will there be reduced seating in the Upper Mayflower when the seats are made more comfortable for fans? Good luck.
So, first of all, let's nail something here. It's not about safe access and egress. So we could have a full Upper Mayflower, and people will be able to get in and get out safely. So it's not about safe access and egress. It's about comfort, seat comfort, and then it's about on the concourses is being able to have in place something which is comfortable and conducive to the right environment on a match day. And to that end, when the development was redone, it was done on the basis of it being a redeveloped stand, which it is, and that does mean that, technically speaking, we could have a full stadium and an Upper Mayflower. However, that has to also be approved by the Safety Advisory Group, and it can only be approved by the Safety Advisory Group when you do have people in play. It can't be done before that, so they have to look at everything from people coming in, coming out, etc., and then what happens on the concourses. The right answer has been found, because I think we did go at 100% when we first opened up the stadium, and it felt very uncomfortable to a lot of people. And on that basis, we made the decision to reduce that in tune with the Safety Advisory Group. It wasn't a safety issue, it's a comfort issue. And therefore, it's not about how do we end up in that position. What we've now got to do is look at how do we resolve that. And the main thing is, as I've already said, is that we will come up with a solution. We have got plans in place for a solution, and those have to be worked through. It does require investment, but we're determined that we will get to the right solution, both in terms of seat comfort for the facilities that are provided throughout the Mayflower and for the concessions that are on there.
Taking a similar tack, Nick Abott on YouTube has asked about whether there's a plan to fill the corners in Bobby's Garden and around the other side, I guess, whether you can talk about that.
I think I referred to this before. I think to increase capacity across the stadium is something we would ideally want to do at the right time. The business case has to be made to do that, which would involve obviously increased attendances. But I think it's something that is a live issue now that we should consider. Whatever we do, it's got to be the plan for the long term. So we also need to take into account where we might be in 15 years' time, and not necessarily where we are just at this moment. So certainly it'll be something that will be in that overall mix for consideration.
David, there's a lot of ways to spend money, isn't there? As a head of finance, how do you balance up the kind of requirements and pick the right one at the right time?
Yeah, I mean, we sit down as an executive team and also at the board meetings and review and discuss these different opportunities. And it's just about, as you say, Dan, you've just put it perfectly, finding the right ones at the right time. Andrew's referred to business cases there, so all of the staff at Argyle are constantly putting together these business cases. They're put together and they're reviewed on their merits, and then we make what we deem to be the best decision for the club. So if you look in recent years, sorry to go back to finances again, but I can't help myself. If you look in recent years, this year we'll do nearly £12 million in turnover. And that compares to, I think if you went back 3 or 4 years, it was around 6 or 7 million, I think. And I think that just shows how far we've come. And how have we done that? Well, it's investing in the right areas, improving the match day experience so that more people want to come and enjoy a match day at home park. Similarly, investing in things like Argyle TV, which offer us a return on investment, because people enjoy the product and they want to buy their monthly passes or their annual passes, or they want to stream the games live and so on. The grandstand's another great example, and the hospitality. We've referred to some of the limitations in the upper tier, but the hospitality has been a fantastic success, and I hear some fantastic reviews from people in there, and as I heard before, it's sold out in certain areas. It's sold out for many fixtures, and certain areas there's a waiting list. So all of this just helps to build that revenue base, and as we've said already, it all goes back in to the football, really. So just to give an example there, I think Andrew alluded to it earlier, a big increase in the football budget this year. How have we done that? It's through investing in those areas, and then people like yourselves coming along and enjoying the product, and then that goes back round. And so that 6 or 7 million to 12 million has helped feed that increase in the football budget.
Simon, you look keen to say something.
Yeah. If we go back 5 or 6 years, it used to be the mantra at football clubs that the only place that's worth investing in is in the first team. You've got to put your money on the pitch. And we took a rather different view, that it was worth making coming to an Argyle game a good day out, a better experience than it was 5 or 6 years ago, let alone when I used to come in the mid-60s. So the fans have responded to this, in fantastic fashion. So all the money that we've spent on the grandstand, that we've spent on big TVs, that we've spent on signage, that we've spent on point-of-sale terminals to kind of increase the flow through, that we've spent on TVs in the concourse, that we've spent on the website, that we've spent on Jamie's communications and Dan's communications team, has really had a fantastic response from the club, from the supporters. Our season ticket sales are up 50% from when we were in a similar league position. Shirt sales are up. Revenues in the store, I think, have doubled in the last 4 or 5 years. So the fans clearly appreciate that having a better time at home park is something that they're prepared to buy into, which we're really pleased about. But when it comes to aspirations for the club, which is where we are now, we've got a lot of money in the bank. We've got new, deep-pocketed, albeit minority shareholders. It's really time to start investing in football in terms of the football infrastructure. So I think our stadium is now a very good stadium. The facilities for the fans are excellent. We'll continue to invest in things like the Upper Mayflower. We'll continue to invest in things like the experience around the ground to try to get people to spend more time in the ground. So all that will continue, but I think some of the big projects are going to be football related. And aspirationally, we've now got a site at Erniesettle. We'll be looking at that. We've got other ideas. We need a better quality infrastructure around the first team training. We need somewhere for our academy to be able to say, this is home. We need somewhere for our women's team to be able to say, this is home. So, we've got a lot of plans that we really can't go public about at the moment because they're really not firm. And, they're not necessarily going to be led by us. So there's a lot going on. And, I think we now have the resources that we can start to think more seriously about some of these long-term projects that are going to help give Argyle the infrastructure, the facilities that are appropriate for what we aim to be, which is, as we've said before, sustainable championship club. So these are really exciting times. But we're not yet clear what the priorities are going to be. So, just thinking around the ground, we want to fill in the corners. Yeah, sure. We want safe standing. We haven't even talked about safe standing yet. We want a big screen. That's on the way. But really, it's these long-term projects, I think, that we should be getting more excited about. And, I hope that you'll all be excited when we're able to talk about them in more clear fashion.
How are we doing? We got any more in here? Yes. Oh, 2 more. Right. No worries. Okay, I'll come to you in a second. Reminder that you can still submit questions online on YouTube and Twitter using #ArgyleFansForum.
Okay, thank you. Name's Paul. You mentioned safe standing. Could you explain a bit more?
Simon's very good at opening the door, isn't it? And then the question comes back to me. Obviously it's fairly recently that, very recently really, that there has been the move forward to accept that safe standing will be in grounds. Obviously it's trialled in the Premier League and has been successful. It's now open up to the lower leagues. From our perspective, it is something that we certainly will consider. It is something that we've looked at as well. It, again, needs to be considered amongst other things. So, for example, one of the reasons we didn't replace the seats in the Devonport end was because we're considering safe standing. So over the course of this next few months, we'll be costing that up, having a look at how much it might cost for us to be able to do that. And then amongst the other things, we'll then look at how much of a priority it is. We'll seek fans' views as well, further fans' views, because I think there are some people who don't want safe standing as well. So if and when we do that, and I think it will be a case of when we do that, we'll have done the fan research. We'll have made sure that it's in the right area, that it doesn't restrict views, and that is something that there's a large number of people do want.
Just to add to that, I think some of you may have seen in the press that certain clubs, I think Andrew was alluding to this, last year were able to go into a pilot scheme. So I think Cardiff City was an example. That's something we sat down as an executive team and discussed, and for the reasons that Andrew's just mentioned there, around wanting to get fan views on it before we do it. It might not be for everybody. We'd already sold season tickets all around the stadium, so we wouldn't want to just impose that on the fans. So there's a process to go through. As Andrew says, it's difficult. You don't want to impede views. So if somebody says, "Oh, we'll put it in the Devonport end," so you might do blocks 1 to 5. What does that mean for the people who are sat in block 6? Can they still see the goal? So you have to think about how it's structured. So we'll have to work with experts to make sure it's right for Home Park, if and when the fans want it, and we go ahead with it.
With the new sighting of the Jack Leslie statue, have you any concerns in regards of possible vandalism? The reason I say that is because James Beattie statue at Ipswich has been vandalised in the past, and I was wondering whether you got any long-term thoughts about that.
I think we would be very disappointed if that was the case. I think it means a lot to everyone in the city, and will mean a lot to everyone in the city as well as Argyle fans. So, of course, it is something that you cannot discount. But equally, I think we've got to make it, as accessible as possible, because and that's a fine balance. We see statues, don't we, and other things of recognition which actually then become completely enclosed and people can't see them. So I'll tell you what, take on board what you're saying. Hopefully we won't get into that situation.
The reason I ask you that is I just thought it might have been better if it was inside the fence.
Yeah, well, we did look at a few locations, but then you kind of alluded to it there. Inside the fence meant that it kind of wouldn't be then accessible to everybody. So we wanted it to be as accessible to as many people as possible. Fingers crossed it won't be an issue, but obviously getting inside that fence, which I think again is probably one of those things that we'll consider removing at some point. Wouldn't have been the best option, I think, for us, because we wouldn't have got as many people in to be able to see it.
Hiya, it's Carl. I'm in block 11. I don't know why I'm saying that. It's not a question, it's more of a congratulations to the groundsman on how well they've brought the pitch back, considering the vandalisation, 2 months ago. And it's looking like one of the best in the league yet again. And I presume they've been awarded... what's the word? They've come up with they've been nominated for the award again, is it, this season? So big kudos to them as well.
Thank you very much. I know Chris and his team do a tremendous job, and I think over the last few years we've seen, again, steadily improved since certainly Chris has been in place, and the pitch does look great. And I think a couple of years there's a short list that Chris has been on, Chris and the team in the league. So fingers crossed we'll come out winners this year.
If I could just add, I mean, going back to when I first, when John and I first became involved with the board, we had one of the worst pitches in League Two at the time. This is long before Andrew and David turned up. And we were told we needed to spend £500,000 on a new pitch, and we didn't have £500,000. we got a new groundsman, and it's the same pitch. I mean, it gets relayed every year, but it's not a completely new pitch. So, you know, the job that Chris and the team have done really is remarkable. You know, and it's saved the club a lot of money. We have £500,000 and a fantastic pitch. It's extraordinary, and I just commend. We're trying hard. Chris is a fantastic guy. He's unbelievably passionate about grass and grassroots. And I just commend to you an episode of the Argyle podcast in which he's interviewed. It really is. It's a great example of you know, somebody who's in love with his job, in love with his work, and he explains quite a lot about how groundsmen work and how groundsmen at Argyle work.
And a good plug for the podcast as well. Thank you. While we're on the subject of grass, Chris White on YouTube asked, what's going to happen to Harper's Park as a result of the recent announcement?
As a result of the recent announcement, absolutely nothing. Again, I think it's probably fair to say that we're in a position now where we have to look at you know, what are the long-term aspects in terms of facilities, grounds, etc., that will be there for the long term. Harper's Park's been great for the club. It's got lots of great benefits in the fact that it's very close to the stadium. You know, it's obviously a stone's throw away. The players can get there very easily and so on. But it does have its limitations too. I think we need to think about that from that whole premise of sustainable championship club. But equally, we've got to make sure that, you know, if we do progress in any other way than it being at Harper's Park, then it's the right business case for being able to do that.
Thank you very much. A couple of questions on social media and YouTube about what the money is going to be used for. So Matt Pinney was talking about the money from the investment. Matt Pinney asks whether any more money is going to be available for the first team, while Phil Kirk asks whether any more money is going to be available for the women's team. David, do you fancy this one?
Yeah, go on then, Dan. I think Simon's already said this, to be honest with you, but the money is for infrastructure projects to support the club in the medium to long term, rather than short-term gains that we might try to make, which is what I would describe putting it into the first team as. So what we want to do is build our income profitability so that can feed the football budget in the longer term. So I suppose indirectly it will find its way onto the pitch, but it's not a direct relationship, and that doesn't mean we've set a budget for this year which we feel is very competitive, and it's based on our budget that was put to the board back in April, May time. Yeah, I don't know if Andrew or Simon want to add anything.
The thing I would add is that everything we do is about putting it into football. So you know, it's not that it's separate things. The income that we generate is to go towards, amongst other things, to the first team. So you know, primarily the first team, but there are also the academy that we have to finance as well. So it all goes either in a straight line or indirectly back into that. Probably the second question which I would pick up, which is the women's team, I think, and I think we do need to speak about this. I'm sure Simon will have a view too. But first of all, Argyle are absolutely committed to the progress of the women's game. We have put, or we do put every year, we put tens of thousands of pounds into the women's team. So that covers things like registration of players. It includes the kit, it includes the sponsorship, it includes the travel, it includes the medical insurance. So it's not an insignificant investment that the club makes. We're equally, though, conscious of the fact that you know, women's game is still in growth. So yes, the Women's Super League gets a lot of money and attention, and that's been primarily financed through broadcasters and so on. But in the lower leagues, that is not the case. So to progress the women's game, I think it needs a pronged approach, you know, a multifaceted approach in terms of different organisations. You know, if you look at the EFL gets money from the Premier League, and that is one of the reasons why clubs are able to be able to keep going. I was going to mention the word sustainable. A lot aren't sustainable, but they're able to keep going because they get money from the Premier League and from indirectly from broadcasters. That needs to be the approach that is therefore put into the women's game right through the different age groups. So we can do our bit, but I think it's got to be a collective approach to how we do address that.
There's a lot of questions, a lot of mentions of the women's team on social media actually, which is probably good to see and points the direction of travel. Obviously, we would encourage everybody to get along and support the women's team if you can. Simon, I know it's something you feel quite passionately about.
Yes, I think since we arrived, both Jane and I have supported the women's team, both indirectly and directly with money. It's a really tricky issue. They are a cost, but the direction of travel, as Andrew's explained, is very, very clear. They're increasingly integrated into Plymouth Argyle Football Club. We now support them financially. We support them through. We've integrated their communications, their media stuff into the team at the club, and the direction of travel is clear. It may not be quick enough for everybody, but as I say, it's continuing to integrate and continuing to support. We are very committed.
A couple of questions about retail as well, and then I'll come back to the room. Jason Harding, I think we'll put this one your way, David. You like retail, don't you? As a finance guy. Has there been a consideration to expand the club shop? It's fantastic to see so many fans use it and additional revenue come into the club, but it's a painful experience to wait in queues. Surely a bigger unit or operation and more tills and staff would solve the issue. And a follow-up from that from Toby PFC on Twitter is, has the club thought about implementing anything in the city centre, for example, during periods where the shirts are released and so on?
Thanks for that one, Dan.
You're welcome.
I'm not sure my girlfriend would agree when you say that I like retail, but anyway, I can see Jamie looking at me on this one. So on the shop size, yeah, we recognise it's incredibly busy, especially at time. That's because our kits are so good, by the way, but it gets it gets incredibly busy at this time of year, and that is something we recognise, and we looked at the same thing last year. And we implemented the rapid retail unit, which you'll see in the far corner of the stadium there outside, to try and relieve some of that pressure. We are looking and discussing other potential solutions, perhaps even another unit, perhaps. I don't know, but with regards to the second point that you made around the city centre, it's just like everything else, and it goes to the bigger shop as well. It's putting all of those different ideas. If we did everything, that 4 million would not last very long. If we did Bobby's Garden, grandstand, facilities, it wouldn't last 5 minutes. So it's about finding those right investments at the right time for the club.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, I certainly would be an advocate for a bigger store. Of course, where is the conundrum there. What I would say is, again, in terms of retail, the online presence has increased significantly over the last couple of years. So it's now about 50-50 in terms of percentage sales, whereas it was probably 70-30 just a couple of years ago. So I think we've got to look at retail in a broad brush approach. In terms of product improvement, I think it's been tremendous. Not just in the first kits, but I think in some of the accessories, the fashion. I'm doing a good plug here. Christmas sales, etc. Again, it's working out what the sweet spot though is in terms of pounds per square foot. So we have got a small shop for what we do now, and I think certainly we have to look at what would be the ideal size and where it might be. But that's, again, what it has to fall into what are the priorities over the next 2 or 3 years.
Let's go back into the room.
Hi, it's Chris Jenkins. Following on from that, I'm quite disappointed actually in the product range in the shop. A few years ago, there was much more pink stuff aimed towards ladies, which is probably a bit politically incorrect, but there doesn't seem to be any sort of more ladies stuff anymore. You know, I've got a handbag here. There's none of those in the shop. I have a pink puffer jacket. The puffer jackets generally, there's none of those in the shop. I'm just a little bit disappointed at the lack of range for women, really, especially with the ladies' team doing so well.
We'll take that on board. Obviously, both again looking at both inside the shop but online, there is a lot that's online for women. You know, so there are certainly more. But it does probably come back to that point, which is around, you know, the space that we've got available. That being said, I think, you know, we should constantly look at, you know, what have we got provided within the shop. And obviously your comment's very valid, and we'll take it away.
Got any more in the room at the moment? Yes.
Cheers, thanks. Hi, Kevin Pedler. We've all understand about the sort of gradual building up season by season and making the club a sustainable championship side. Is there an issue if, say, touch wood, the first team do somewhat better than they did last season and we find ourselves in the championship next season? Does that cause you guys a headache, or is that a bonus?
I think we'll probably all three have a view on this. So undoubtedly the dynamics change when you go into the championship. There's more revenue because there's more broadcast revenue that comes into the game, into the championship. So that immediately increases the level of income that you have coming into the club. In Leagues 1 and League 2, it's quite limited, the broadcast revenue that you do get, but when it steps up significantly when you get into the championship. The other side of that, though, is the wage profile. The first team wage profile goes up significantly. So therefore, you know, that is undoubtedly a challenge, but it does go back to what we were saying before, which is that we have to be able to, when we do get into the championship, have the infrastructure and the ability to be able to generate as much revenue, self-sustaining revenue as we go along. So, you know, those things like the big screen, like the programme of works that we'll do at some point in the Mayflower Grandstand to increase attendances, like the corners, etc., would therefore get the opportunity to be able to increase that revenue and therefore have a better opportunity of being able to stay up there as well, which is obviously what we want to do. It's all, you know, all at once that you need to do that. So I think we'd also then need to look at, you know, as well as the wages, there is also, you've got to be quite clever and smart about how you do your recruitment in terms of players. So some of that is obviously about permanent contracts. Some of that is about, you know, some of the things that we've talked about already, which is fortune income, perhaps, you know, moving some players on, but also recruiting younger players as well to come in, loan players, etc. So I think it's there's lots of things to consider. It would be a challenge for sure, but obviously everyone has a challenge when they move up a league, so it's one we'd be prepared to take.
So I think it would be both a bonus and a headache. It would be a bonus for all of us, and it would be a headache for him, which is just fantastic. It would also be a headache for Mr. Jusnip, who's just arrived. Hi Neil. He heard the word championship and thought, I better come and see what's going on. So no, look, Andrew's explained it perfectly. Of course, it would be a headache, but you know, are we going to avoid having a headache? Of course not. No. So it would be a fantastic headache to have. I look forward to the day when Andrew has to deal with it.
Just to add to that as well, I mean, we can look at examples. Other clubs have done it. Neil's going to hate me for saying this, but other clubs have done it. Luton Town, Millwall, Brentford, they've had budgets which aren't like some of the ones at the top end of the championship. So if you take Luton and Millwall, they've managed to stay there with budgets that aren't enormous. So how have they done that? I think Simon will tell you as well, that by being smarter. So it's probably a good time to mention, actually, we've got a new head of football data who's just joined us this week, who will help us on that journey as well. So, yeah.
Actually, just to expand, it comes back to the question Paul was asking. You know, the new investors were very clear. You know, when you start negotiations, you sign a letter of intent, and their letter of intent says, you know, we intend to own 20% of Argyle in exchange for £4 million. That £4 million, I'm going to quote it inaccurately, but it says something like that £4 million will be used for infrastructure, for facilities, and for resources including data analytics. So it's all about building a base that will enable us to maximize the points we get from every pound spent on the first team. And we've made tremendous progress in that regard, which is why it would be a headache, but I think it's a headache that we would be able to cure pretty quickly.
We actually had a question about investing in data and analysis and so on. I know that you guys feel all three of you feel quite strongly on it. Can you talk a little bit more about the approach there and what the new head of football data will be doing, if you haven't done so already?
Yeah, sure, Dan. So we've had somebody called Ross Goodwin, who is our next step on this football data journey, really. So I think we've been quite public in speaking that we've been working with a consultancy called Market Insights for a period of time. And now this is the next step, having somebody in-house to be looking at data. So Ross has joined us this week, and his work is going to be spread mainly over 3 different areas. So he'll be supporting Elliot and team with the whole sports science, how far have people run, what all the data that we collect in that area. It'll also help in match preparation, so data on opponents, for instance, data on our players, how do they play against certain teams, and help make those more informed decisions. And then the third area is probably the most obvious, but around recruitment. So his work will cut across all 3 of those areas.
How for those of us less informed on data, does that differ from your traditional sort of analyst or head of recruitment or so on?
Yeah, so he has data on absolutely everything. A player moves an inch and it's logged. So there's a whole, in fact, there is so much data. He came to me yesterday, he said, gosh, there's so much data. I was like, yeah, fantastic, get your teeth into it. So it's just about making those, it's supporting those people, Dan, with those decisions. So yeah, you still need to watch the players, and I think we'll all say that. It needs to, so I'm getting a little, it's about supplementing that with all of that data that's collected from Opta and so on.
Yeah, they're mostly elsewhere, yeah. Let's remember that Ryan Hardy scored 18 goals, I think, last season, so he knows how to stick the ball in the net. And actually, if you look at the data on goals per minute played, both Ryan and Jeff Gott were pretty effective. So I look upon, there's been a lot of attention on data analytics on the football side, but using data is essentially to overcome human biases. And if anybody wants to talk about human biases, catch me on early in the morning and we'll talk all day. So it's basically don't rely on human judgment because it's flawed. So I should say that we are using data more aggressively throughout the club because we're trying to improve our decision making. That's all it's about. It's not about trying to emulate Moneyball. It's not about trying to be well, it is about trying to be clever actually, but it's trying to overcome human biases. And we're using it now throughout the club. We just hired a head of football data, and he's head of football data because on the operational side of the club, we have another guy who's been working with our CRM, our customer relationship management software, which has already been put to tremendous use. So, we're now better able to identify who the people are who are spending money in the shop, what their tastes are. We're better able to target what people want when it comes to where they want to sit, to all aspects of what the supporters want. And therefore, we're able to tailor the offers to them. So that's all about making better decisions, and it's just the same on the football side. Why is it different? It's because in football, so much is done based upon gut instinct. It's based upon judgment, but human judgment is flawed. And, we see it even at the top clubs that they make very strange decisions that, sometimes turn out well, but more often turn out badly. And it is without question that the best clubs, and by best I mean those who get the most points per pound spent, are the ones that are embracing this overall philosophy about being objective rather than relying on judgment, old-fashioned rules, and so on.
Thank you. I was hoping to ask this while Neil was in here for a brief period, but he's squirmed away. So, Andrew, you're going to have to act on his behalf. Everyone loves a bit of football transfer gossip. Did we have any approaches for any of our players over the summer?
We always have interest in our players, as you would imagine. We didn't have anything that was something that we thought would be in the long-term interests of the club. I can't really comment on that.
Well answered, thank you. I threw you under the bus a little bit there. David, back to a retail one for you. Favourite subject. Are there steps in place to ensure that the shop doesn't run out of kits at Christmas again?
Yes. The interest in the kits this year has been unprecedented. It's unbelievable. And I think that's, as I said before, because they're so good. They are really popular and they're selling really quickly. We have placed another order. So, I mean, I'll give you a bit of history, actually. If you go back to, let's go pre-pandemic, so 18-19 season, I think we sold about 8,000 kits. This year we've ordered 17,000 kits, and it looks like they're going to sell out. So we've placed an order for a further 3,000 kits. There's quite a lead time on those orders, but we aim to get them here before Christmas. But as I say, I mean, it's fantastic. And I walk around the stadium on a match day, and everyone's got the new kits on. It's brilliant. But yeah, there is a plan, and we are ordering more.
Sorry if I may. I think the sponsorship deal was a stroke of genius. It's just fantastic. But it wasn't done to sell more kits. But it's a nice, happy consequence, I agree. The other reason why we sell more kits is that before Andrew came and before David came, I mean, this goes back before I was chairman, the board used to have to approve the kits. And I think we decided 3 or 4 years ago that, you know, a bunch of middle-aged blokes were not the right people to opine about what was going to sell best in an increasingly diverse fan base. So, you know, kudos to Jamie Yabsley and his team, who worked with Puma to get these designs that really are just fantastic and selling extraordinarily well. I don't think we can make any promises that any orders we put in are going to be fulfilled. You know, I'm in the global investment business, and what we are seeing is creaking of global supply chains. We've seen it across industries. We've seen it with RTV. Global supply chains are suffering partly as a result of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But even before that, these are lingering effects of COVID. So COVID in Southeast Asia in particular, and China specifically, is still being treated very aggressively. So factories are being closed down if there's a case of COVID. And it is causing disruptions to the global supply chain. There are other clubs who haven't even had their first arrival of kits and won't be able to sell this season's kits until well into the season. So we've been both smart, but I think it's fair to say we've also been lucky that you know, we've had these arrivals, and I think it would be daft to promise that they're going to be here for Christmas, because these are things that we can do our best to control, but they're ultimately out of our control.
Yeah, I think if you read online, I think Leeds' kit may have gone overboard on a container. So if we're talking about containers going off the ship, I think I saw a story about that recently.
Have we got any more in the room?
Story.
We've got any more in the room at the moment? We're running short of time. For the awareness of everybody who's watching online, Jamie, our head of marketing, who's in charge of the kits, has just said they will be here and be in no doubt. That's 2022, he's confirmed. So everyone stand down, it's all going to be fine. Any further questions in the room? I'm conscious we're running out of time now, so let's go for a few online quickly. Another one for you, David, I think probably. Robert Bowden asked on YouTube, how much did the grandstand hospitality and conferencing turn over last year?
Yeah, okay, that's an interesting one. 1.9 million in short, which is absolutely brilliant. And I think the split, it's about 1.2 million of match day hospitality and about 700 grand of non-match day events. And our plan is to grow that, though. That's the start. That was the first year coming out of COVID. I think you'll probably recall if you look back at Christmas last year, there's still a lot of uncertainty around COVID. We had a lot of cancellations during the month of December, which is typically a very busy month for us. So if you were to look in our budget for next year, it's quite a bit higher than 1.9 million, but 1.9 million is an incredible achievement. I think someone asked me at the fans forum back in October, will we do £1 million? Well, we did 1.9, so I think that... Yeah. No way. But you know, I think longer term, it's got to be to grow that, more events at home park, match days and non-match days. So I think it's a brilliant success so far. Can you kind of contextualise that around what we might have been expecting performance in the first year of the grandstand being fully open after COVID? Well, I think that the £1 million may have come from somewhere. So I think it may have been referenced in comms prior to COVID, for instance. So I think Andrew's going to go.
Yeah, just one supplementary thing to events. We think of that space as in the Club Argyle as being the main space, but actually we've also got to look at the entirety of the stadium as well. So I think you'll remember pre-COVID we had 2 big concerts lined up, and that will be something that we'll be looking to do every year in the summer, starting from next year. So watch this space. That's exciting. Zach Brown asks on Twitter, are there any plans for digital advertising boards around the pitch? It would make the club money due to sponsorship packages that could go and turn into the squad. Again, this is one of those investments that we've spoken about. I think James Greenacre, who leads on our side for all of that sponsorship and advertising, mentioned it to me just this week. He said, oh, the company that are doing the big screen, could they do advertising boards as well? I said, well, not if it's coming on a ship. But it's another one of those investments where we'll look at the business case. It's probably more on the commercial side rather than with the big screen. Yes, there's the payback angle, which we spoke about earlier, but a big element of having the big screen is improving the match day experience for everybody. The advertising boards are probably more towards that commercial side. So we'll have to look at the business case. I think if you look, virtually all championship clubs have them. Not all League One clubs have them. We will make an informed decision, and we'll do it at the right time for Argyle. And the reason for that is it's very much linked to broadcasting. So obviously lower league clubs don't have as many TV games, so the business case for doing it is not as clear as the championship. That being said, I think if streaming opportunities do develop, then obviously the business case for putting in digital boards will increase for League One and League Two clubs. How are we doing in the room? Is anybody feeling brave? Maybe we've gone through them all. There's one more I've got online here from Andy Laidlaw. Apart from yourself, Simon, is there any way to promote Argyle in shirts, merchandise and raise profile in the United States?
Yeah, I think there is. We're working on plans that we'll probably be able to talk about a bit more later on, essentially to engage with supporters throughout the world rather than just, Devon and Cornwall. Part of our vision has always been that we want to have a supporters base in the Southwest, but we want many supporters beyond the Southwest. It's something I've talked about since I've been involved, and we haven't got very far. Though I note that at Argyle USA, shout out to Argyle USA is sponsoring Neil Jusnip this season. I think we've got some plans that we'll be able to talk about in a couple of months, but I think it's going to be very much helped by our relationship with the people at Argyle Green. We've now got 30 or so very enthusiastic, well-heeled, well-connected shareholders, either directly or indirectly in Argyle, and I think they can help us. I was just saying to Andrew yesterday, I think we need a really big target for the number of people we can get, and then think about how we're going to get there. So David talked a bit about margins, and how, you know, when we sell in the shop, we get £1 of revenue, but it costs us whatever it is, 50 pence to get that revenue. Every subscriber we get to Argyle TV costs us next to nothing. So that money goes almost directly to the bottom line for reinvestment. So it's a big opportunity for us, I think, and one that I think we're now in a position to start being able to think about ways to take advantage of it. I'm quite excited by it, to be honest.
Would a pre-season tour be one of those opportunities?
Sure. Anybody prepared to pay for it, we'll do a pre-season tour of the United States. I do think it is something that at some point we can think about, at least. You know, we've got a couple of new shareholders who are very big in the ice hockey world, or the hockey world as we call it over there. That means that we have relationships now, you know, indirectly into big hockey clubs like Tampa Bay and the New Jersey Devils, who obviously have training facilities, okay, mostly on ice, but would also have access to grass pitches and so on. One of the problems is that when we want to go on tour, the Major League Soccer is underway. So, you know, if you're Plymouth Argyle, it's going to be more difficult to get a friendly with the Philadelphia Union than if you're Chelsea. So it's something that we'll look at, but there are no firm plans as yet. It's obviously something I'd like to see, but I don't know what the players would think about making a transatlantic trip rather than going to spend time in the sun in Spain, which is what we've been doing for the last couple of years. So it's a possibility, but there are absolutely no firm plans.
Have we got any more questions in the room? Yes, go on. This will be the last one, I think.
With all this talk about money, it's lucky that one of our investors, I think it's called Red Bull Ventures, are a blank check company. Have they passed you the blank check yet?
I think you're confusing them with what's called a special purpose acquisition vehicle with the same name that was set up by Billy Bean. Red Bull Ventures is actually not a blank check company. It's a limited liability company, which is a very, very common form of getting people together to form a partnership to make investments. It's not a blank check company. The check, I mean, I think I've said this already, but the check for £4 million arrived before we issued the shares. So that money's in the bank, and this wasn't a promise. It's cash in the bank. I think you may be looking at the wrong website. I don't think they have one. Okay, I'll look. I have my doubts, but you show me after.
I think if that's everyone, we might just round off with a quick question to each of you. What your thoughts are ahead of well, not ahead of the season, but early on in the season for the season ahead. Andrew, would you like to start?
I'm really looking forward to the season. I think both on and off the pitch, it's really exciting. It's, as always, different challenges. We've got a World Cup in the middle of events, but equally, I think we can all say that we all would feel that we've got a stronger team than we did last time. We've been able to build on that, and there's we're playing exciting football. I'm very confident that we'll be in and around where we were last year, if not better, which is great. It's 46 games though, so we mustn't take like one game as being an indication of where we are, which I think we can all tend to do, can't we? And we have got a tough run of fixtures. I'm not making any excuses, by the way. I just think that by the end of the season, we'll be in and around where we are. So very much looking forward to it. And the second thing I'd say is, outside of that, all the fantastic opportunities that are going to present themselves to look at the long-term future of the club really excite me. So I think we've got some major projects which we've got the ability to be able to take on board and be able to shape the club for the long-term future, which is really exciting.
I think we're going to win the FA Cup, get automatic promotion by Christmas, and you know, make progress on all fronts. I mean, it seems obvious to me. No, look, I mean, it's hopes and expectations. I mean, I hope we win the FA Cup, get automatic promotion by Christmas. I expect us to compete by playing good football towards the top of the league. But, you know, there's so much randomness and there's so much competition these days. Just look at the other clubs around us. And again, if you look at the results last season, there's a clear divide between clubs with a chance and clubs without much. Clubs with a chance of promotion and clubs with a chance of relegation. I think there was a 9-point difference between the 12th and the 13th club, or the 11th and the 12th club last season. So what we're seeing throughout English football, the erosion of competitive balance is happening even in League One. So it's going to be really tough. It's going to be really competitive. And, you know, one of my worries is that it is a very tough beginning to the season for us. And we need to remember that come the end of September. But, you know, I agree. The team looks better. We're still playing good football. You know, we just need to stick a few more in the net, don't we? But I think everybody knows that. I have no views on this that are any better than anybody else in the room or online.
So I joined the club in, I think, 2020 during COVID. We'd just been promoted under Ryan Lowe. In my first full season, we finished, I think it was 18th, was it? Last season we finished 7th. So there's a clear direction of travel here. So we're obviously going to finish in the top 6. It's just where in the top 6. But
well, actually, surely we've improved by 11 places, so we're going to end up somewhere in the bottom of the championship. This is called extrapolation from too few data points.
I think Simon needs to read the rules, but yeah. So top 6.
Wow. Okay. Now we've got to dampen that expectation down, haven't we? Thank you everyone in the room for joining us. Thank you everyone online for joining us. Let's hope for a great result today, and it's great to see everybody back in the room. Thank you.